Hello, learners. Now we shall look into the evolution of the Indian and global startup ecosystem. Introduction. The phenomenon of startups has emerged as a defining feature of the 21st century global economy. Startups symbolize innovation, entrepreneurship, and disruption. They are often small, dynamic ventures that challenge established firms, introduce new products and services, and reshape consumer market. The startup ecosystem refers to the interconnected network of entrepreneurs, investors, policymakers, educational institutions, incubators, accelerators, and other stakeholders who collectively nurture entrepreneurial activity. The evolution of this ecosystem, both in India and globally, reflects broader economic, social, and technological transformations. Globally, the rise of startups can be traced to technological revolutions and the liberalization of economies. In India, the startup ecosystem has developed in unique ways, influenced by the country's demographic profile, policy reforms, and socio-cultural aspirations. This course examines the evolution of startups in a global and Indian context, analyzing their historical roots, growth phases, institutional support, and challenges. It highlights how global trends have shaped entrepreneurial practices while also recognizing the specificities of the Indian journey. Conceptual understanding of the startup ecosystem. The startup ecosystem encompasses the institutions, resources, and relationships that support the creation and growth of startups. It includes venture capital firms, angel investors, government policies, research universities, industry associations, and entrepreneurial communities, as told by Eisenberg in the year 2010, describes the ecosystem as a dynamic system of interdependent actors that collectively promote entrepreneurial success. Globally, the ecosystem has been shaped by a combination of technological breakthroughs, supportive policies, and risk tolerant investment cultures. In India, the ecosystem reflects the interplay of global influences and local conditions, such as demographic advantages, digital penetration, and policy interventions like the Startup India. Evolution of the global startup ecosystem. Early entrepreneurs and industrial revolutions entrepreneurship is not a new phenomenon. The industrial revolution in the Europe and the North America during the 18th and 19th century witnessed the emergence of entrepreneurial ventures that established factories, railroads, and trading companies. These ventures laid the foundation for capitalist economies. However, the modern startup ecosystem, marked by innovation driven ventures, can be traced to the mid 20th century technological revolution. Rise of Silicon Valley. The post World War II period saw the rise of Silicon Valley in California as the epicenter of technological entrepreneurship. Close linkage between research universities like the Stanford, defense related government funding, and venture capital investment fueled the birth of the companies such as Hewlett Packard, Intel, and Apple. Silicon Valley became a model ecosystem with networks of innovators, investors, and mentors. Dot com boom and bust. The 1990s marked the dot com boom, characterized by the rapid growth of internet based startups. Companies like Amazon and eBay emerged during this period, while others failed dramatically in the crash of 2000 and 2001. Despite the collapse, the era entrenched the culture of risk taking and venture funding. The dot com experience underscores the need for viable business models and sustainable growth strategies. Globalization of startup culture in the early 21st century. Startup culture spread beyond the United States to Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Globalization, digital connectivity, and venture capital expansion contributed to this diffusion. Countries like Israel gained recognition as startup nations due to high levels of innovation and entrepreneurship. China's ecosystem flourished with the rise of companies like the Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu, driven by a combination of state support and market reforms. Contemporary global ecosystem. Today, the global startup ecosystem is characterized by unicorns, accelerators, and digital platforms. Startup Genome 2023 notes that ecosystems like Silicon Valley, New York, Beijing, London, and Tel Aviv continue to dominate ranking while emerging ecosystems in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America are gaining prominence. Global ecosystems increasingly emphasize deep technologies, sustainability, and inclusive growth. Evolution of the Indian startup ecosystem. The early entrepreneurial activity. India has a long tradition of entrepreneurship, reflected in family owned businesses, trading communities, and small industries. However, modern startups began to emerge in the 1980s and 1990s with the liberalization of the Indian economy. The rise of information technology and outsourcing firms such as Infosys, Wipro, and the TCS laid the groundwork for the entrepreneurial spirit. Post liberalization reforms. The economic reforms of 1991 dismantled protectionist policies and opened India to the global markets. Liberalization encouraged private enterprise, foreign investment, and global exposure. This created opportunities for entrepreneurs in software services, telecommunication, and manufacturing. The Y2K phenomenon and outsourcing boom further positioned India as a technology hub. Early 2000s and the rise of technological startups. The early 2000s saw the rise of consumer facing technology startups. Companies like the Make My Trip, Naukri.com, and Rediff pioneered online services. The availability of skilled engineers, low cost, and growing internet penetration provided fertile ground. However, challenges such as limited ventures, capital, and weak infrastructure constrained the growth. The Flipkart era and e commerce boom. A significant turning point occurred with the founding of Flipkart in the year 2007. Modeled on Amazon, Flipkart popularized e commerce in India and attracted global investors such as the Tiger Global and SoftBank. Its success inspired a wave of startups in online retail, food delivery, and logistics. Companies like the Ola, Zomato, and Paytm followed, symbolizing India's leap into the digital economy. Government initiatives and policy support recognizing the potential of startups. The Government of India launched initiatives like the Startup India in the year 2016. Digital India and Atal Innovation Mission. These programs offered tax benefits, funding support, incubation centers, and regularity reforms to encourage entrepreneurship. State governments also developed policies to promote regional ecosystems. Emergence of unicorns. India has rapidly become home for one of the largest pool of unicorns. Startups valued at over $1 billion. By 2023, India had over 100 unicorn across sectors such as fintech, e-commerce, edtech, health tech, and logistics. Companies like Byju's, PhonePe, and Razorpay demonstrate the diversification of the ecosystem beyond e-commerce. The role of digital infrastructure. The launch of the Aadhaar Unified Payments Interface, that is the UPI, and affordable mobile data through initiatives like the Reliance Jio transformed India's digital landscape. These innovations reduced barriers for startups by enabling seamless digital payments, identity verification, and internet access. Digital India created an environment for innovation at scale. Comparison of Indian and global startups. Ecosystems. While global and Indian ecosystems share similarities such as reliance on venture capital and emphasis on technology, key differences exist globally. Ecosystems like Silicon Valley benefit from long established venture capital networks, robust intellectual property regimes, and strong university industry linkages. In contrast, India's ecosystem is relatively young with structural challenges like the regulatory complexity, limited domestic venture capital, and infrastructural gaps. However, India has unique strengths including a large domestic market, demographic dividend, and rapid digital adoption. Unlike the United States or Europe, where startups often focus on global markets, many Indian startups address local problems such as financial inclusion, education, healthcare, and logistics. This localization gives Indian startups both social relevance and economic potential. The challenges in the evolution of startup ecosystems. Global challenges globally. Startup face challenges such as access to capital, intellectual property disputes, and intense competition. The concerns about unsustainable valuation of unicorns have also surfaced, raising fear of financial bubbles. Additionally, ethical concerns such as data privacy, labor practices, and environmental sustainability complicate the global narrative. Indian challenges. India's ecosystem face unique challenges. The bureaucratic hurdle, inconsistent regulatory policies, and infrastructural deficits hinders startup operations. Access to funding remains skewed towards the metropolitan hubs like Bengaluru, Delhi, and Mumbai, leaving smaller cities underserved. Talent retention, gender disparities, and cultural stigma around failures further complicate the growth. The myths surrounding startup ecosystem, several myths obscure understanding of startup ecosystem. The first is the belief that success is quick, whereas most startups require years of persistence. The second is the venture capital is indispensable. Despite many successful bootstrapped ventures, a third myth is that startups are only about technology, while social and service innovations also contribute meaningfully. Finally, the myth of homogeneity ignores the diversity of entrepreneurial context across countries and regions. Future trajectories. The future of startups globally and in India will be shaped by emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, biotechnology, and clean energy. Startups addressing sustainability and social impact will gain increasingly importance. In India, Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are expected to become new hubs of entrepreneurship due to digital penetration and policy support. Greater emphasis on inclusive ecosystems, diversity, and responsible innovation will define the next phase of evolution. Conclusion: the evolution of the startup ecosystem, both globally and in India, reflects broader historical, economic, and technological dynamics. While global ecosystems pioneered the culture of innovation and venture funding, India has carved a unique path by combining global influences with local solutions. The trajectory from family businesses and early IT firms to today's unicorns demonstrates India's remarkable transformation. Startups are no longer isolated ventures but integral to national development strategies and global economic networks. Their continued evolution will depend on addressing structural challenges, fostering inclusive ecosystem, and aligning innovation with societal needs. By understanding the interplay of global trends and Indian specificities, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and investors can chart a path towards sustainable and equitable growth in the startup ecosystem.